morning. Thanks again to Pacific Life for sponsoring this presentation, and Arthur, I appreciate you taking the time to be here this morning. I know the day you're not out on your boat, you're not making any money, so I'm not entirely sure why I was invited here, because I'm not going to tell you a lot about marine mammal impacts we've documented with derelict fishing gear through our program, but I'm going to talk about our partnership with fishermen and how fishermen in this case are very much involved in trying to reduce the unintended impacts of lost fishing gear. I do want to point out that we call our program the Lost Fishing Gear Recovery Project instead of the Derelict Fishing Gear Recovery Project, and that was at the request of the fishing industry, who really objected to the use of the term derelict because for the most part this gear gets lost unintentionally. It's money out of their pockets when they lose a pot or trap or net, and so for the most part this gear is not lost on purpose. We started our program in 2005 with funding from the State Coastal Conservancy and the Ocean Protection Council, and have remained funded primarily through state funds. We borrowed heavily from protocols used by Washington State for a very successful derelict fishing gear recovery program they have going there. They call it derelict fishing gear. And I also borrowed a diver from the excuse me, sorry, I'm looking for the pointer. No. Jennifer Renzullo is our field manager. She was a diver for many years for the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands fishing gear recovery effort. We find gear through side scan surveys sometimes, but primarily through search and collection efforts of our divers. When we do know about gear, we log that into an Excel-based system that is linked to navigation software. So when we do have a report of lost gear, either lost by a fisherman or encountered underwater by a diver, we can go to that spot with our divers. I think the most important point I want to make is that we are working with fishermen to do the gear recovery work in the water. We hire through contracts, through UC Davis, urchin harvesters to recover the gear. They go underwater, find the gear, sorry, having issues, find the gear primarily using scooters. There we go. Yeah, I think that's sorry. In the case of trap gear, we tend to go to areas where we suspect have a high index of suspicion that we'll encounter lost gear. They use scuba tanks and scooters, find the traps or pots, attach float bags to those pots, raise them to the surface, and then the on-board deckhand, and usually either me or Jen helps pull the stuff on board, document any impacts of that gear in terms of resources entrapped or entangled. In the case of net gear, our divers work in teams of 2 at least, always within visual contact of each other. They work on hoses, not on tanks, to sort of reduce their own entanglement risk, but also just for safety reasons. And they bundle up that net and raise it to the surface with float bags. The net gear is winched to the surface and winched to the surface and brought on board and brought back to shore. Gear that is in good shape and is identifiable to owner is returned to the fisherman. And really that is, well, for a couple reasons. One is back to what I said in the beginning, they really don't intend to lose this gear, and it causes them a certain degree of economic hardship when they do lose it. So a lot of this gear is identifiable to owner either because a buoy may still be attached. The buoy got pulled below the surface, so when the fisherman went back to retrieve the gear, he or she wasn't able to find it. So we can identify the fisherman to owner that way. In some cases, when fishermen are telling us about losing their gear, we're able to go back and retrieve it for them. What that does is it gets that buy-in we need from the industry to see this project as something that's a benefit and not something that's trying to point fingers at the problem of lost fishing gear in the ocean. We have a couple different teams we work with. In fact, this one, the one in the upper, your left corner, is out right now. They're just finishing up a couple weeks of work out of San Diego. That's Tony Schroeder on the left, Mike Neal in the bright blue shirt, and Glenn Dexter. They work off of Glenn's boat, the Triton. Down below, lower left, Randy Can in the middle, and Barry Lundgren on the right, work out of Morro Bay. And then Mark Brubaker here on the right is a Santa Barbara fisherman. And he works with Barry Lundgren on his boat. And these are our teams that go out and do the work. To date, since we started, we've accomplished 25 weeks of field work. We've removed well over 1,600 pieces of gear, weighing over 50 tons. It's been primarily lobster trap gear and seine nets and gill nets. This week alone, Monday through Wednesday, our team working out of Santa Barbara pulled 36 lobster traps and 7 hoop nets, and in those lobster traps were 207 live lobsters. Our vast majority of our entanglements and entrapments are target invertebrates, crabs, lobster. We have documented entanglements of delphinus and gill nets, a couple California sea lions, cormorants and gill nets, and then several sharks, both live and dead, in gill nets and seines. So I think the take-home message is here, just a couple pictures of these entanglements. The marine mammal parts are salvaged and turned over to the LA County Natural History Museum for identification. Take-home messages are really that this program succeeds because the fishermen are doing all of the work in the field. We get the funding and get the permits in place, and then basically just put them out on the water to do the work. And it's because they're doing the work that we get the information from the other fishermen about where they're losing gear, they're seeing gear. The heaviest impacts of lost gear is on invertebrates, but we do know, based on our small amount of data, and obviously from the data that's already been presented this morning, that gill nets pose the greatest risk to mammals and birds. And that's it.
Who gets the lobsters?
The ocean gets the lobsters back.
Do you have any sense yet of, either from the fishermen or from this program, of the rate of loss per year of gear? I know in New England there's something like 3 million lobster traps, and they figure 10% a year.
Yeah. We don't have that, but we have their anecdotal reports. This year, most lobster fishermen out fishing out in the Channel Islands are reporting losing at least a couple hundred traps a year. We don't have a handle on even the number of crab pots deployed in the state. Hopefully that's going to change in the next few years, and that'll give us a better tool, a baseline for being able to assess loss. But most fishermen we talk to, at least lobster fishermen, say they lose at least 10% of their gear a year. And I do want to make the point that we do our work out of the season, so we're not running the risk of being suspected of removing legally deployed gear in season. There have been a couple exceptions to that. Right now, the work out of San Diego is happening because of the MPA. The MPA is coming online January 1st, and we had funds to specifically work in MPAs, but then there have been some, we've been removing gear in areas where there are closures. It's not supposed to be any fishing, but the gear has been caught up in props, we think, and dumped right in the channel in San Diego. That's why we got several of these traps just really loaded with lobster. So.